Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back, friends. Welcome to another video lecture by Kami Biology. Today in this video lecture we are going to talk about the cytokines in detail. Now this is the first video lecture which is regarded to the cytokines, and in this first video lecture of the cytokines we are going to talk about the introduction related to the cytokines, and we are going to talk about the function of the cytokines. So let me write. Cyto means cell, while kines means movement molecule. Now what does cytokines means? The cytokines are actually, these are the hormone like proteins, or we can say these are the non-antibody proteins, or cell signaling molecules, or soluble or glycoproteins. Okay, let me explain. These are the hormone-like proteins, or sometimes these are the non-antibody proteins, or these are the cell signaling molecules, or these are the glycoproteins or soluble proteins, which are usually secreted from the WBC. These are actually secreted from the WBC and other cells. We'll be discussing inshallah in the next video lecture. Okay, now what are the action of each cytokines? The cytokines are usually against the microorganisms, and it is also against the specific cancer cell. It is also against the cancer cell and against the parasites as well. So we can say that cytokines are usually involved in the specific immunity and in non-specific immunity. No, why? Because it is activated against all microorganisms. That's why we can say that it is involved in the non-specific immunity, and it is also involved in the specific immunity because it is activated against the parasites and it is activated against the viruses as well. Okay, now what kinds of the cytokines are activated against the viruses and what kind of the cytokines are activated against the parasite, we'll be discussing inshallah in the next video lecture. Then the cytokines, the main function of the cytokine is also that these cytokines are actually activate, regulate, facilitate and differentiate the general immuno system of our body. Okay, now moreover the cytokines can also act as an intracellular mediator, means these cytokines are secreted from inside the cells and then affect the other cells, and sometimes they can also affect their own. Now if we discuss the function of the cytokines, so we have different function of the cytokines. We have autocrine function of the cytokines. Let me write here, autocrine function. Now what actually happen in this autocrine function? In this function, when the cytokines are released from the cells and it affect the other cells. Let's suppose we have the cells. Let me draw here. Let's say this is the cell which we call that A, or this is the WBC cells, and we have another cells. Let's suppose this is another cell which is also the WBC cells, we call that B, let's suppose. Now the signal which are secreted from A cell and have effect on B cell, we call that autocrine function. Okay, then we have another function of the cytokine, we call that paracrine function. Okay, then we have paracrine function of the cytokines. Sorry guys, in autocrine function we have, let me erase this one cell, sorry. Now in this case we have the signals which are secreted from the same cells and effect on the same cell. Let's suppose if these are the signal molecules which are secreted from this A cell, means with this WBC, and have the effect on that cell as well. Now these cytokines are effect on their own cells, then we call that autocrine function. Okay, then we have paracrine function. Now in paracrine function, what actually happen, we have the, let me draw a cell structure. We have the cell, let's suppose this is the cell of the WBC, any WBC, macrophages, dendritic cells, or neutrophils, monocyte. Now let's suppose this is the WBC. They secrete the cytokines nearby other cells. So this is another cell. Okay, this is another WBC. Now when these cells receive the signal, then due to this way, this WBC cells have some different kinds of functions. Okay, we call that paracrine function. Then we have another function which we call that, let me write, endocrine function. Now what actually happen in this case? In this case, the cells secrete the cytokines, and such cytokines are circulating in the blood and reach to the target cells where each cytokines are needed. Okay, so let's suppose if we have this kinds of the cells, let's suppose WBC, and they secrete their chemicals which we call that cytokines to the bloodstream. Let's suppose this is the bloodstream vessels. Let's say this is the vessels. Okay, now once the cytokines are fall down on this bloodstream, then they reach to the target cells, or let's suppose they reach to the cancer cells or to the parasites, and after that the parasites and the cancer cells are die. We call that function endocrine function of the cytokines. Okay, now if we watch that what kinds of the cytokines can perform their function, there are different function of the cytokines. Let's suppose we have the cell. Let's say this is the target cells. Target cell. It may be WBC, cancer cell. Now what actually happen? Now let's say the cytokines are released from the cells. Cytokines. Now once the cytokines are released and fall down on the target cell, and the target cell, once they receive the cytokines, okay, although there are different kinds of the cytokines and the cytokines have different functions. Okay, now if the cytokines are received by this target cell, then this target cells, what actually happen, will move to specific area where the infection or where these cells need. Okay, so we call that chemotaxis phenomena. Chemotaxis. So we have different kinds of cytokines which are responsible in the chemotaxis. Inshallah, will be discussed in the next video lecture that what kind of the cytokines we have which are responsible in the chemotaxis. Then we have the cytokines which are specially responsible to proliferate the cells. Okay, the cytokines can also proliferate these target cells. So these target cells are divided into different. This target cell are divided into many types. Okay, so this target cell are divided into different types. We call that proliferation. Okay. Now these cytokines have also another function in which the proliferation phenomena are inhibited. Inhibition of proliferation. Proliferation. Okay, sometime what actually happen, once this target cell receive the cytokines, so then this genes are switched on. Once the gene are switched on, then what actually happen, this target cell are die. We call that apoptosis. Okay, so sometimes this target cell are die. So let me, no, this target cell are die. So we call that apoptosis. Apoptosis. Program cell death. So due to cytokines, the target cell can also die. Now due to this cytokines, we can also say that the cells are due to these cytokines, they can also differentiate the cells. So let's suppose if this target cells have a different structure, let's say the target cells have circular shape or spherical like shape. Due to this way, when this target cell receive the cytokines, so the shape of the target cells are changed. Sometimes they are elongate, or the cells are in a circular shape. Different kinds of the cells can receive the shape. Okay, so we call that differentiate. One thing more about the cytokine, that the cytokines are usually affect the eukaryotic cells. Okay, although they can also affect the microorganisms, but they can also affect the eukaryotic cell as well. Moreover, these cytokines can also involve in all aspects of the diseases. Now, whenever, as we talk that the target cell receive the cytokines, so remember, on the target cell there are some extracellular molecules which we call that receptors. So usually each receptors which are present on the target cells to receive the cytokine signal, we call that ligand. So let's suppose these are the ligand. Okay, now there are 100 of the ligand which are present on the cytokines. So the target cell can need, or this target cell just need low concentration of the cytokines for the activation of the genes. Then according to the secretion of the cells, okay, whenever the cells secrete the cytokines, due to this way we have different names of the cytokines. We have monokines, we have lymphokines. Okay, so let me explain each of the cytokines and let me erase this one portion. We have monokines, when the cytokines which are released from the mononuclear macrophages, it is usually secreted from the mononuclear macrophagocytes. We call that monokines. We have lymphokines. So remember, when the cytokines which are released from the T lymphocytes, usually it is released from the T cell or T lymphocyte, then we call that lymphokines. Interleukins. So remember, in interleukin, when the cytokines are released from one leukocytes and have effect on the other leukocyte, we call that interleukins. Okay, let's say we have the cell WBC again in this case, and they secrete the cytokines, and these cytokines have effect on the other cells, which is also WBC or another type of the cell. Okay, we call this kind of the cytokines are known as interleukins. Okay, then we have Kaluni stimulating factor. In short form, we can write that CSFS, Kaluni stimulating factors. These are the cytokines which are released from the WBC and effect on the immature cells or immature immunocells which are present inside the bone marrow, to activate or to facilitate or to differentiate, or specially responsible to develop each of the cells inside the bone marrow. to develop the immuno cells which are present inside the bone marrow. Okay, so that's in a sense about the cytokines. Okay, I hope you understand about the cytokines. If still you have any kind of confusion or questions in your mind, so you can write it through a comment. Inshallah, I will give you answer as soon as possible. Okay, inshallah, in the next video lecture we are going to talk about different kinds of the cytokines, and we are going to talk about the source of each cytokines, and we are also going to talk about the function of each cytokine, means the action of each cytokines on the computer screen. Thank you so much for watching this video.